You come on down front, have a seat. The closer you get, the better you can hear, huh? Well, I've been looking forward to this event for quite some time, and I want us to open our ears up, and also want you to open up your mouth. And you will probably hear some things this morning that you may not agree with. The purpose of this is for us to learn and to become better breeders, so this breed will be a stronger breed in the future than we've been in the past. There are some up here on this panel that probably doesn't think the best of our breed, I'll put it that way. And I may be being very nice when I say it that way. There are some up here that I believe loves us, and hopefully when we get through, we both will make some progress. That we will be better and maybe convince one of these people that we're not as bad as what they may think. In fact, they may love us when we get through with them, all right? So that's why we call this the love connection. Everybody get thick skin and let's have some fun this morning. But more than anything, let's be more educated when we leave here. I personally want to thank each one of these individuals that have taken the time to be here and to share their thoughts with us this morning. And I want to thank each of you for getting up early this morning and being here at this event. I feel like the chairs will continue to be filled. I know there's some still coming in, so make room for them and so we can all be comfortable. This time I'll turn it over to our Executive VP, Bill Pendergrass. He'll be introducing.
It's actually a real pleasure to be here with this group of professional industry reps that we have here. What you see represented in front of you is everything that spans the entire beef industry, from large commercial cow-calf operations that are in production scenarios in vastly different environments, all the way up to people that feed our cattle, people that deal with supply chain issues to produce a high-quality product that goes in front of the consumer. Procurement. We have one of the largest cattle buyers on the North American continent up there. So everything that you do as seed stock producers, those bulls that are going out into the industry, these folks right here, they're touching those genetics at some point in time along the way. What you do matters. So we're going to get their perspective of where we're at as a breed, probably more importantly, where we are at as an industry. When you get right down to it, folks, we're in the food production business. Touches every single thing that we do. And these guys are all heavily involved in it. Now, I'm going to introduce them individually, but I'm not going to go into great detail because the first thing we will do, we'll let them give us an overview of their operation. On the far end, we have Mr. Brandon Crittendon, manager of Wolf Point Ranch, Fort Lavaca, Texas, right down the road. We've got Travis Brown, Fox Brothers, Okeechobee, Florida, one of the largest, it's an NCBA top 10 cow herd, probably top 5. I haven't looked at the new issue this year. Leslie Callahan, Crossroads Cattle Company. Moves up a lot of cattle. He knows exactly what's going on in the industry. Mr. Pete Bonds, immediate past president, TSCRA.
Now they haven't hired me yet.
Still in, I apologize. Mr. Bonds Ranch, Saginaw, Texas. Incredible commercial cow-calf operation. They feed a lot of cattle. He is truly in touch with the industry. Mr. Mark Sebranek, general manager of Ursa Condal Feedlot. You all might scratch your head on this, but Mark has got so much certified Angus beef hardware hanging on his office wall. It's a lot of the cattle that he's fed through that program. He really is. This guy knows more about grids than anybody I've ever had the pleasure to do. Jim Lerwick, Alvin, Wyoming, and Jim, he's still scratching his head saying, why did you ask me to come down here? Well, I keep telling Jim, we have aspirations there are a lot of Angus cows north of here. And we want to breed those cows. So Jim is basically in the high quality replacement heifer business. Very insightful what he's going to do. Cheramie Viator, I worked with Cheramie for years and years and years, and she just recently come from an endeavor where she was basically doing quality control between all us, a commercial and seed stock deal going into all those cattle going into the feed yard, and she was getting to deal with the whole foods end of things. So, yeah, and gap. So there's a lot of different things. Okay, Brandon, you need to know this. We're going to start on the far end with you. So, gentlemen, if you and lady, if you would give us an overview of your operation, 2 to 3, 5 minutes, whatever, and then we'll just come on down the line.
Good morning, my name is Brandon Crittendon. I've been manager of the Wolf Point Ranch in Port Lavaca 15 years. We are located in Calhoun, Jackson County, the Coastal Bend region. The area is heavily populated with Beefmaster commercial base and Beefmaster cattle. We are commercial grains breeders, and we put together a really nice herd of grains cows and head. We've diversified that operation as well with we utilize about 300 head as recipient cows for a calf raising program. So we've raised a bunch of purebred Beefmasters through our recips and other breeds, and that has sparked a lot of interest, my interest over the last couple of years in seeing these purebred Beefmasters born through our recip cows. In addition to that, our Brangus cows, the balance of our Brangus cows are primarily utilized for replacement females, which we utilize in AI and embryo transfer through our herd. Our steers are either retained ownership or marketed as feeder cattle. We also have a small herd of cattle that we're kind of playing around with the show steer side of it, and that is kind of, I guess, part of the interesting side of it, where a few years ago I looked at doing some crossbreeding into our Brangus cows with Beefmaster. If there's and I love them. And me personally, I do not, I don't care what color the animal is, I'm just looking for a good one. But for my customer side of it, there is a little bit of a color issue that crops up every now and then. And we've taken those really good females and we've turned them into our steer side. But anyhow, outside that, I've grown up watching Beefmaster cattle like a living for a bunch of people in our area. I've also been able to see some cattle that have been born and bred and raised on the Gulf Coast for a long time as Beefmaster base, and then cross it back in with Brangus genetics. It's a fantastic cattle. I would love to continue using more Beefmaster genetics. I'm looking for some information on some bulls. I'd love to see some carcass data, some feedlot information. Love to look at potentially controlling the rising color issues. Just some, I don't mind a little white on the face and a little white on the underline. It's just when some color crops up on the beak and legs and on the sides of the animals. So it's kind of where I stand today. And we measure everything we do on the ranch. So we've seen some great performance out of the current half-blood females that we have right now. We're trying to get Kevin out right now. It'll be my first set. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you, Brandon. Travis, if you would, kind of step up there closer to the mic, guys.
Yes, sir. My name is Travis Brown. We have a ranch. I work for Life Brothers Incorporated. It's a family-owned corporation. Run by a board of directors. So it's a big ranching outfit. So We run, it's a commercial cow-calf ranch, and we primarily run Brangus and Beefmaster bulls on our commercial cows. We've run Beefmaster cattle years ago for many years, and some prior management decisions, we got rid of them for a little bit, and so now we are getting back in the Beefmaster business for about 4 or 5 years now. We're trying to build that back up. We've recognized that when we got away from the Beefmasters, our cows, which is our money, our cows our production went down a little bit, as well as just the look, the hardiness, and the longevity of our cows was something. So we, introduced the Beefmaster back into our program, and I've been trying to get as many put together and brought home as we can. We're excited. We're doing some different things. We've had in the past we just had a straight Beefmaster herd, and that was kind of like our little babies, we love them. But what I've been trying to do for the last 4 or 5 years now is, since we've incorporated these Beefmasters back into our program, is crossing these Beefmasters with our black cows, with our commercial Brangus cows, and because that's where we need the most help, in my opinion. The females out there, out of that cross, is what we are really hunting. And so far we've been really pleased. They've been doing a lot of good things for us, and I'll be glad to share all that with you later. But we track everything there at Lights. Everything from grade test data to wing weight data. We're actually a member of a big allied group of us that have got together of large ranches in Florida. We put a group of us together to, kind of command some buying power and some selling power for pharmaceuticals to feeding our calves. That's that's what we're doing now. We try to measure everything, and we've been feeding most all of our calves in our group. The majority of the calves that we've been feeding with JBS, and they've been a great partner with us, sharing a lot of data with us, performance data and harvest data, and so we've got a lot of good stuff back, and then we're glad to share that with you. So not only are they working at the ranch, but they're working on the other end too for us. So that's a quick little description. And I just thank y'all for having me. I'm honored and glad to be up here with these men and women. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Leslie?
Morning. For those of y'all who saw me last night, y'all know that I'm not a singer by trade. My name's Leslie Callahan. Born and raised in Central Texas in the beef business. Went to Texas A&M University. Got out. Worked for Harris Ranch Feed Company. Worked for 5 years in their packing industry, primarily for the reason I wanted to learn the meat business. When I got out of there, I was general manager for Callahan Livestock, which is the largest order buyer in the state of Texas. And left there and started my own company 13 years ago, based out of Austin, Texas. We handle about 350,000 feeder cattle and calves a year. Trading primarily, we're traders, we're not order buyers, so we take ownership of the cattle and risk of the cattle. Trade primarily with the big feed yards in the Midwest. We don't have a cattle financing division where we finance cattle for individuals that are turning out on eating grass and then do buyback programs. Deal primarily with the futures industry to protect our risk. We also own cross-hog ranches in New Mexico and have about 450,000 acres out there that we run about 2,800 miles. Beefmaster base cows, run express bulls on top of all of them. And we wean those calves, run them to wheat, and then sell them in the spring. So we have our fingers in a lot of different things. I have individuals that work for me that manage feed yards, that manage coke industries back in the day when they were in the feeder cattle industry. So we have a very diverse group of people who have a wealth of knowledge from top to bottom, from the packing industry, such as myself, to feed yard management. I was asked by Colin to be on this panel, and we're asked to be on several panels, and he said, are you pro or con the Beefmaster industry? And I started laughing. I said, which one do you want me to be? Because Mark and I were talking with any breed type today, there's pros and cons of every one of them. The pros of the Beefmaster side of it is those of us that were raised in Texas and the South know the vitality of animals that have a little bit of ear and the maternal traits of those type of animals. The Beefmaster group got away for several years and thought they were raising decoration and rugs and not cattle and the spots and those kind of things. I look at an animal, when I look at an individual animal, and we're buying individual animals, and we have about 28 to 30 buyers that work for us across the United States. We're looking at them as animals with their clothes off, per se. I'm not so concerned about color. I think somebody else on the panel already said that. What we're concerned about is the performance of the animal once the clothes come on. And Beefmaster Angus cross, Beefmaster Charolais cross, any of those types of animals we love to buy. The straight Beefmaster steer calves we tend to run into some problems with unless we're selling them to our customers in South Texas or in Arizona or Southern California. So the questions that I'll take up here will be more from a marketing standpoint, how to market them. That's the primary ways to market them and what buyers, when they hit your door on the commercial aspect, are really looking for. And most of you being pure breeders, you probably don't think much about that, but your customers are the commercial guys. And it's when we hit your customers' doors that you have to be very concerned about. And that's the people you have to take into account of. The guys and women in this room that are in the Beefmaster industry, y'all can all talk about the EPDs and the traits, to the commercial guy and the guy that's going to buy those calves and turn them out and make yearlings out of it. They want an animal that's going to perform. It's got bone, it's got stretch, and doesn't have a lot of color pattern to them. It's very simple from that perspective. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to anybody one-on-one. Many of you all I met yesterday afternoon. We had really good conversations about whether
we're the big companies, Cactus and Freona. Moved up to southwest Kansas, which kind of had to talk my wife into that. Promised her I'd be there 3 years and been there 22 now. Yeah. Second. First Kendall purchased us in 1994. They brought me in 1993. First Kendall took over. I was in the feeding side of it through the nutrition and had some problems. Set up a feeding program, working my way up through the ranks. 2001, I took over managing the yard. One of the deals working with Cactus, I helped set up the formula program we had with Tyson, worked with the range drill program with Freona, and I always felt like there was an opportunity for producers out there. My dad and I fed a few cattle. We were known as the small guys. Nobody wanted to mess with us. So that's been one of my primary goals. It doesn't matter whether you feed 20 head or 20,000 head. To me, you're all equal. You need to know the same information, what's going on, what's valuable to you. First Kendall was founded in 1961. Today we have 6 feed yards in a joint venture and a 7. We put 210,000 head on feed at one time. Each yard is unique. The yard I manage, 90% of the cattle, 80 to 90% of the cattle go on some type of formula or grid. We have 8 grids that we use, 4 mainly through 3 of the packers. We have our specialty grids that we've set up with Dyson and Cargill and use quite a bit of the U.S. premium beef. Now, one thing with the grids, premiums for black cattle. You have certified Angus beef, Black Creek premium. These are opportunities to make some extra money, so that's why people are going after black cattle. So that's why we asked the question, what percent black is there in the pen? My question back to you is, what are you trying to get accomplished? We have Beefmasters at the feed yard right now. They take them to the sale barn, they're going to take a discount because they fell. I think the last set we shipped brought $35 a head premium over the market on a grid. What are we trying to get accomplished? Quality grade is one. Fed right with genetics, quality grade can come. I had the highest marbling animal was a Brangus steer 2 weeks ago out of Texas. 17-inch rear body, prime plus CAB. Now, we won't get the opportunity to eat that steak because it's going to the East Coast and probably I couldn't afford it. But this is a phenomenal animal. And there's those kinds out there. We're looking more and more for the Boss Indicas for a little bit here on the cattle coming up north, because what we're trying to accomplish now is our dressing percent. We talk dressing percent, that's the weight of the carcass. We're selling carcass on the grid. The plant average is 63.5% to 64% dressing percent. On our Beefmaster cattle, Brangus cattle, air cattle, we see quality or dressing percent from 64.5 up to 66. The Angus cattle out of the north, dressing percent 62 to 63. We did a study this year with 600 head of Angus steers coming in averaging 800 pounds. They wanted to see what is the point, how long can we feed them before they start to lose money on the grid. So we started shipping the cattle at $13.75, took them to $14.00. The last group went out at $15.80. $15.80, we ran in some heavy carcasses, 40 to 50% year grade 4s and 5s. We did get the dressing percent up to 64.10, but they also lost $2 a hundred on the grid. But one thing they did understand was they did bring total dollars per animal more than all the other cattle that went out before. So on a dollar-to-dollar deal, that's the best opportunity to do it. Some of those speeches I heard yesterday talking about getting the Beefmasters out early. Well, one of the reasons we're not is the market this week was $1.38. We're feeding the cattle for 80 cents. So we're gaining 58 cents for every pound that we're putting on the animal. Why would we ship the market? We're going to take them up as large as we possibly can before we get into a heavyweight carcass and try to get the dressing percent up. Then the grade comes up. So all that comes out is we're looking at the total dollars back to you. So it's an interesting concept. One thing about with Lerwick and Dahl, we have retained ownership. 93 to 95% of the cattle on feed with Lerwick and Dahl is retained ownership. We feed very few of our own cattle. And most of that is we're trying to do the best we possibly can for the customers. It's like my butcher yard, we have a one-time capacity deal, they call it 35, I call it 32, currently it's 28. Majority of, we haven't had any owner or company cattle in there in the last 5 years. When the market's good, we're looking at trying to make the customer as much money as they can, not fill it up with family cattle, take the opportunities there. But along with 6 feed yards, we have 6 grain elevators. We do joint venture with a dry liquid supplement plant. We have a joint venture with a
understands crossbreeding and heterosis at a level that very many people don't. He puts this to work, but you know, this is gonna be fascinating. Jim?
Well, I doubt if I can live up to that speech, but I find it really intriguing that you've got this group of people together. But the history of my family is my grandfather was an orphan in Norway and negotiated with the ship captain to get to America by working his way across. Came to Iowa and worked for a family there, moved to Wyoming for 160 acres of free land. The family followed him out, and one of their daughters homesteaded as well. And from that half section of ground and the 8 children from that union, family farms and ranches operate in 5 states, separated many times on probably 100,000 acres from Iowa to Wyoming to Dakotas, Nebraska. But my personal interest has been in the meat business with farming to support that. My grandfather had milking shorthorns. My father in the 40s put Herefords on those. In the 70s, I put Angus on those. And then we participated in the mongrelization of the beef business in the 70s and 80s with Simmentals and Charleys and kept heifers, and nothing was done right. In the 90s, we had an opportunity to get in the hog business. We went from 400 sows to 12,000 sows. In Alvin, Wyoming, we had 97% of the pigs in the state of Wyoming. I got on the National Pork Board, served there while we saw that industry consolidate from the independence of purebred breeders and breed associations to a pork production system that has now taken over the world with technology and management. It became very clear to me as I served there with my pointy-toed shoes amongst the farmers in Iowa, Indiana, Arizona, and wherever, that the chicken industry had taken a large share of the beef protein supply opportunity, and the pork industry was poised to take a large share of the beef industry's opportunity in protein production, and that unless the beef industry understood the opportunity of coordination or integration, that trend would continue until we became a very small sector of the plate. I don't know how to do that, but there are bright people in this industry can do it. But what I saw happen was that from genetic management and from technology management, those other industries took our market. And I believe that unless we truly understand genetic design and genetic management, with, as Pete says, the customer's demands in mind, we will continue to lose market share. I don't think any of us in this room are interested in that. And so how do we manage genetic design? And I think the answer is we find out the attributes of the genetic packages that will produce a more efficient and a better product, and we find our place within that as individuals and as breeds or combinations of breeds, and then we become efficient in our place to the point where we can begin to compete more effectively with other protein sources, whether it's seaweed or pork or chicken or whatever. So what have I done? I've been preaching for about 15 years on how to get that done, and I said, well, who's going to make it happen? And the answer has always been, and I don't mean to be offensive, but the answer has always been from people that I respect. It won't come from the breed associations. It won't come from the genetics companies. Well, then who's it going to come from? And the answer was always, I don't know. The pork industry, it came from 6 farmers in a pub in England who sat down and said, if we don't do something different, the Americans are going to completely take the pork production system. And they designed a set of genetic animals based on the female, not the sale of boars, but based on the female, that transformed the entire pork industry in a global way. So there I sit on the pork board, listening to the complaints of individual breeders about how these crazy Englishmen are going to take our market. And I'm thinking, well, all right. Why? Because they're adapting technology. And so they, in the pork industry, they took the productivity of a sow in the United States of America from 8.5 pigs per sow per year to where today the best are producing 35. Now that's the competition in the protein production system. And it came from the production of meat via technology and thought processes that were systems. So what are we doing? We believe that the female is the answer. And how do we build a female to fit the environment and to fit the customer's design? Because we're a little different than the pork industry. We can't do it all with technology. We can't build the barns, contain the animals, whether it's in China or Wyoming or Arizona. We can't quite do that because we're a little different deal, but we can impact sort. And what do I mean by sort? I mean, what Pete just said is that he doesn't care what color they are, and he's happy to take advantage of yours and my mistakes in breeding because he'll buy that at a price that he can make a profit. But if we sort our animals in such a way that they don't have those compensatory opportunities, then we get to retain that money and Pete can't take it from us. Somebody will. The Certified Animal Beef program has done a wonderful job of eliminating the mongrelization of the American cow. The Beefmasters and other crossbred breeds have done a wonderful job of meeting their environment with certain crossbreeding systems. We have to figure out where they fit. Now, I can talk only from the northern tier because I do not understand southern cattle. But I do understand that maternal Angus and maternal Herefords produce one of the best cows in the world for the northern climates. And she can operate from Dallas to northern Canada and do very well. So that's where we focused. And we started with the top Herefords in North Dakota so that we could put a genetic package together that was consistent, because that's the first breeder that would listen to my spiel. And so last year we bred 1,200 heifers. Wonderful year to start. There's a market on the wall a year. We had a $2.5 million cash flow that returned 40% on every dollar invested. I leveraged that and made 400% money on 400% return on my money last year. That'll never happen again in my lifetime. It may not in my children's. This year we'll double the size of that. It's a $6.5 million deal. If we can make 15% on it with the leverage, we'll make 40% on our money. My target is 20% on every dollar I have invested in life. I can't do that every year, but that's how I measure the success of the program. What are we doing? We're taking the Angus herds, which we're going to influence by bringing their replacements to them from the Angus genetics we want. We're putting Hereford bulls on those. We're buying those females back. We're developing them in the most efficient and possible development way we can. We're sorting those to fit the customer base, and the customer base determines what kind of animal they want out of that set of heifers. This year we had 2,300 heifers at a 72% conception rate AI and a 4.5% open. I can't do that in my own home, but I can't in my home herd, but I can do it with a well-developed system of breeding heifers. And we delivered last year, in our first year of the program, heifers from North Carolina to Oregon, from New Mexico to North Dakota, and several points in between. We don't know where the program goes, but we believe it has the same possibility as the PIC 6 farmers in the pub. We have a strong interest in northern Texas and Oklahoma from a group that want to do it with tiger stripes and take it from there. I don't know where the Beefmaster breed fits in that, But I believe that just like in the pork industry, there can be different products for different environments that will eliminate the sort and take the efficiency level where the profitability is. This is something I've proven on my own herd for the last 40 years. This year I shipped my calves on the 500 cows at the home herd. We sorted back one steer and one heifer when they got on the trucks and went to the feedlot. The heifer had a toe that was broken, the steer had a frozen foot and a frozen tail. Calves got on the truck, 705 pounds for the steers, 670 pounds for the heifers, and the same guy bought them that's bought them for the last 5 years, and I retained a third ownership. That's $800 a head profit this year per cow, and $780 a head of profit per cow last year. I don't know where it goes from there, but I'm really happy to have those 2 years on the backside of my business. That's the business model of how we put it together to make 100,000 animals of consistent quality that the customer knows what's going to come out at the end.
You have in front of you here today, I'm going to draw a line right here that way. There's lots of value and lots of knowledge, and I hope you're listening. I'm going to ask a couple questions real quick for the audience, just for my general knowledge. How many of you have ever visited a feed yard? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you have ever visited a packing plant? How many of you have retained ownership of your own cattle? Okay. How many of you have ever seen a grid or understand how a grid works? That's some education for us, guys. Just for us to know. That was my point there. I work for an operation in Silver Spur Ranch. Have since gone off on my own, have a consulting business, but my time at Silver Spur is what Bill asked me to focus on. And that was how I got to know Mr. Lerwick here. You know, that genetic design that you talked about, that was my job at Silver Spur, was to design a scheme similar to what he had up there, so that we had ranches in Colorado, New Mexico, Nebraska, and Wyoming, and those cattle were all 15,000 head of commercial cows. All the calves are retained, and we owned them all the way to they were hanging upside down. Now, when you run cattle in those 4 states, you have quite the variation of environment. And I had an animal science professor, actually I knew him when I was a kid, named Dr. Bill Turner. Some of you from Louisiana might remember Dr. Turner. And the thing that I always remember of him was match your cow to your environment. Well, when you try and match your cow to your environment in New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska, I might be Cajun, but that ain't all the same environment. So my challenge was I had to design an animal that could survive, because we shipped cattle. We bred the replacement heifers for one operation, and they were the maternal building blocks for all the other operations. So that was my responsibility to find, build, identify, and oh, by the way, they needed to work as a cow. They needed to make replacement females in some places. Oh yeah, and after the second year, we don't want to buy any more bulls, so you need to make bulls that survive and all that. Don't forget there's altitude. If you've never had a PAP or an altitude problem, you think you're smart, go try and deal with PAP problems. I'm not very smart when it comes to that. They fall over dead. Little bastards just die.
I'm trying to learn about it.
It's the damnedest thing I've ever dealt with. But then along with all of that, okay, after you get them bred, you get calves on the ground. You know, about that time, source and age is kind of a big deal. And don't forget, we sell cattle to Whole Foods. And folks, believe it, like it or not, the demographics of our customers coming forward, it's all natural, it's organic, it has some fancy label on it that makes the consumer think that it is what they think it is, it's going to sell for more money. So like it or not, I had to deal with it. And you know what? When we bought the Bell Ranch, it's 291,000 acres, had 500 miles of road on it. I was the transition team. This is how it went, first day of the shoot. 5 o'clock in the morning, I still have a picture of the Bell Mountain. You know, I'm thinking, wow. Here I am, this kid from South Louisiana. There's Bell Mountain, just thinking about how much history has gone on there. So we gather up, went to camps to the shoot, and I start in line. We're going to put EID tags in all the cattle. And I have this big burly guy, Burley's son, wanders up to me and said, "Ma'am, we ain't never done that here before. I don't want to do it." Everybody that works for me knows that when I do this, it means gather up. And it went like this: "Sir, we're going to start today. If you don't like it, there's a gate." And here's my point. I'm a traditionalist. I believe in Western tradition. It is part of me. Do the right thing. I mean, all the Western traditions. But we have to accept change in the beef industry. And that was part of that change. And so what my job was to go through, and from the smallest piece of let's put EIDs in, all the way to getting folks to understand the profit opportunity to produce all natural beef for Whole Foods and why we had to pass a gap audit. Try explaining what a gap audit is to those guys at the Bell Ranch and get them to have buy-in. I did it. It can be done. And that's my point to all of you, is all these programs that have value add to them, takes a little bit, it's a mindset. Because you know what, today at Silver Spur, all those cattle were traced from birth to harvest and harvest back to the cow. But what it took was the right mindset and understanding of the dollar value at the end. So keep that in mind. 6 things that are surmised from the other end of the table to here. Now I'm going to put it a little blunt, probably a little more direct, a little more bluntly, except for Pete. Number 1, you're all beef producers. You're not Beefmaster breeders, you're not Brangus breeders, you're not Boston breeders, you're beef producers. You need to remember that. That's your number 1 job, you're beef producers. Number 2, unlike Jim, who raises cattle in Wyoming and some of the Midwestern states, I've been fortunate that I raise cattle from Maryland to California, from Wyoming to Louisiana. And you know what? There's a part of the United States you have to have Bos Indicus influence in your cows. I get that. I also get that there's folks that are in the packing industry, folks that are in the feeder calf buying industry. You know what? Those spots and dots that you have on your cattle, they don't work anymore. And you're going to get discounted for them. And I said it, spots and dots. Is that correct, guys? Okay. Next thing, you can't change it if you don't measure it. And that goes from weaning weights to yearling weights to ultrasound to fertility in your bulls. If you don't measure it, you can't change it. And then when they talk about dressing percent, they talk about grids. Folks, as Beefmaster breeders, you have to increase the IMF ability in your cattle. You have to increase the muscle. And if you don't do those 2 single things, there's other Bos Indicus breeds waiting to catch you. But you have to increase muscle. You have to increase IMF. And the way you do that is through dedicated AI programs.
Thank you. Okay, this is how we're going to go from here. We have a microphone set up front and center. By now, I hope that there are a lot of really good questions. Please come to the center aisle, take the microphone, and if there's a particular individual that you'd like to address the question, you fill it out, and then we'll see where it goes. Now, since I don't see anybody making the way to the microphone, I think that means that you all would like to have a question for me. So here comes James. Are you coming to the mic? Okay, I'm going to adhere to the membership. First question from James Shaw.
It's not more or less a question, it's kind of a statement. I'm from the chicken industry capital of the world. We talk about increasing, the muscle, the IMF on our cattle. It takes 9 months to get that baby on the ground. Then it takes another 7 months to figure out if we make the right decision with our AI bull or our natural bull. The chicken industry takes 6 weeks to figure out if they made the right decision on getting the weight and whatever they need in that chicken. A turkey is 27 weeks, and they know what they done wrong or right. The hog industry is about 7 months. And to find out if their breeding was right. Our industry is 2 to 3 years down the road before we really know what we have done, if it's right or not. Thank you.
With that question in mind, go ahead, Chair.
Then you better get to hustling.
With that question in mind, I think we kind of bounce down to Travis from Marx Brothers. Do you have any thoughts, any response to that, to what he just threw out there?
Yes, right. I mean, that's absolutely right. I mean, we definitely have some challenges in front of us as compared to the other protein industries. And with different things with our AI programs and embryo transfer programs, we can close that gap a little bit. But it is what it is. Just like I say, it's 283 days gestation, and then 7 or 8 months till we wing that calf off to really know exactly what we got, and then even further than that before we having the performance data on that calf. So we got a lot of things against us, but I know that we can do it, and through y'all's efforts as seed stock producers, that with your selection and culling criteria, and hopefully with going forward, some observations from our end of what our demands are and what our needs are. Hopefully we can relay that information to y'all, and so when you are going forward, we're definitely going in the right direction.
Thank you, Travis. Yes, Larry, was good with mine. Feel free, if you all.
Directed at you as well as Travis. I know that like Heritage Cattle sold 17,000 steers, for example, last year to JBS. Bill, are we, as a breed association, are we following those cattle to the kill plan? And are we getting that information to you so you can disseminate that to us? Because Travis and a lot of those guys in Florida and even guys in Oregon are using our bulls and they're killing cattle. And as a breed association, are we going to be able to get that data back to us so that we can produce better bulls for those people?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer it, and then I'm going to bounce it back to, we got some guys on this end of the table that are directly involved in that can give us some insight. We're very fortunate through a vertical supply chain in the Northwest. I have approached them. On their own, they have parent verified, approximately 150 Beefmaster steers. Those cattle are beginning to die this fall. We are getting that information back, and yes, it will be fed right back in to create carcass trade scale EPDs. Now, on to Florida Heritage Beef, and Travis, could answer this in greater detail. The only way you get access to data is you have to have skin in the game. You've got to own the cattle or you've got to pay for it. We don't own those cattle. So, what is my job to go facilitate whoever has that data to try to get it to backflow into us. So currently, the information that comes from the packing plant back to the feed yard those individual ranches. So at that point in time, they own that data. Now, would they give it to us? Just depends. You know what's in it for them. Data is currency, it's power, it's information. So, you know, one of the things that our foundation, by the way, thank you everybody for last night's great event. One of the things that our foundation can do to help expedite this, for instance, the data that Travis and Locks Brothers gives, that they can isolate that back to a ranch, okay? But when you run as many cows as they do, you've got several different sires in there. You have group data, which is marketing data. But we can't use that in genetic evaluation. So what would have to happen is, in the perfect world, if we would pay for parent verification on the feeder cattle and the bulls, at your all's level, if you are doing phenotyping on your bulls, when those cattle end up on the ranch, then we can parent verify those steers as they come back to the production thing. And then Fox Brothers, Wolf Point Ranch, Crossroads, Ball's Ranch, then they get a sneak peek. They know exactly what those sires are doing in those environments. So I'm going to let, because every one of these people here, I'd like to get their input on what we as a group need to be doing to make it easier for you guys to participate in and help, let us help you.
I will say, like, just like Bill said, we don't have individual in data, but we have average data, and JBS has been super good to us, to our group, our Florida Heritage Beef group. They give us some performance data on those and some field data, and I was very pleasantly surprised this last calf crop that they got done harvesting them earlier this year, earlier this summer. They did really good, and I don't know which ones were Beefmaster sire, which ones were Brangus sire. It was just averages. But us at Lights Brothers, and there's a few others in our group, in our FHB group, that use Beefmaster rules. Anyhow, we did one of the best of our group. And there's 10 or 11 other ranches in this group, this affiliate that we had put together. We had on our steers was 70+% choice, better. Our health on our cattle was really good. I should have that stuff with me because we had we were very, very pleased with all of our data that we got back from them. And I would love, to get more individual in data and isolate, just our Beefmaster sire calves versus our Brangus sire calves. We would love to know that. It's just, like Chris said, it's money. And if we're, and I guess, when they get them in, they store them and they put them in, their own little store on, and that's why, depending on, we can send a straight load of Beefmaster sire steers, but they're going with, the 3 loads from yesterday and 4 loads or something tomorrow, and they're putting their store. So anyhow, we lose that in just in the numbers, but if there was a way to kind of work with y'all as seed stock producers or to share that data, so we know, what we're doing on our end, and also I can see that be a huge benefit for y'all, selling strategy and technique for y'all.
Travis, do you remember yield grading, any in yield grade?
I'm trying to think of the percentages, but we, of our group, we had the highest yield grade 1s and 2s. It was awesome. Flint and I were both very, very pleased. I hate to say it, we weren't shocked, but we were very pleasantly surprised.
Leslie, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I guess I'm the only one up here that's probably ever been responsible for the P&L of a packing plant. And in the 5 years that I did that, and was responsible for the kill floor, the fat floor, the grinding floor, and the portion control room, and exports to Nichiben in Japan, very independent packer to get that data back. And it's group data, it's not very specific data. It's very useful to you as a producer. As a seed stock operator, when you start talking about the numbers that they can kill 15,000 cattle in a series of weeks to run through a plant, when you start talking about the average producer, Silversburg has this type of power. Most people don't have that type of power. And as a seed stock producer, if you're going to impact X amount, and it's very naive to think that we can go in and start getting individual sire data. I appreciate the perspective from the pork industry. And all of us up here in this panel have one very distinct advantage of most people that are in our industry, and then we control numbers, and we control lots of them. That's not the norm of our industry. And, you know, my brother's way up in the chicken industry, and they're about to come out with a chicken that kills at 8 pounds. And you start thinking about the production of the poultry industry and the pork industry. I stayed in this industry because I didn't want to be compared to the pork industry or the poultry industry. We produce a lot better product, a very unique product. You know, Pete talked about the housewives earlier, and I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent. And in his generation, the housewife was our customer. So you would have to take a rump roast, and my mom and my grandmother, they knew how to prepare a rump roast and a cross rib and all those things. But our customers today are the high-end consumers that walk into a Whole Foods and they walk into a restaurant, the HRI industry. They don't cook anymore. They eat a hamburger, they eat chicken nuggets. From my perspective, I want us to be better than those industries, and how we get there, I'm not so sure, but I don't want to be commoditized. And I think that's where the dollars in this industry are, so I'm a little different than everybody else here. But the average producer in our country owns 18 mama cows. That's a huge stretch for anybody up here on this panel, that when we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands. So how do we get to those? I don't know. But looking at what one female can produce, or what 20,000 or 25,000 cattle are impacted by, that's not a day skill, much less a week skill in our industry. And we all think we're huge producers and have huge impacts, but even the number of cattle that I handle is in 1 week skill. I just want us all to keep in mind that the smaller guy is also the person that we have to impact within our community. And I don't know how we get there, but I'd like to continue to try.
Marshall, I'll go ahead.
Something similar to what you're talking about. We're in the process, last year we bought 15,000 cattle off Superior, off the branches. We EID'd all these cattle. They were all commingled. They were sold in one of the major feed yards in the nation, and went through a packing house where the West Texas State, you know, a packing house doesn't gather individual carcass down. You have to hire West Texas State to come in to do that. They came in there and done it. Now we're in the process of building a computer program, which is going to cost probably $120,000, where we can dump all this information in, and then be able to go back to these cattle killed on the grid, go back to see which ranches this feed yard doesn't want again, which is average, and which is superior. And by having that knowledge, it's tremendous, because, you know, they're not going to buy those below average cattle. They'll get a market for the average, and then what we're going to try to do is buy whatever the advantage is for those superior cattle, give up to 50% if we have to, for buying the cattle back. And it's a learning process. I hope we can get this computer system done to where it really works, but it looks like it's coming through.
I agree with Pete, it does cost to collect that data, but that still is the tag transfer. What we do is we have a dollar charge to do a transfer, put an EID in. We also use a sequential number off of our own feed yard tag, as well as the ranch tag. Everything's left of here, so they kind of look like the kids nowadays. But it's one of those deals, like James said earlier, you know, it takes 2 years to get the information back, so we don't want to lose the information, you know. So when they're recording that data or that tag, they have 1 and 3 that they're going to get. So we have safety. Our deal is to go after the feed yard tag first. We've got cross-reference on it, read EID, all that. But going back to the earlier question about getting information back, and I'm speaking on the feed yard side, you know, can you get, you know, will we get the information back? Hell no. Why are we going to do that? If I get a $50 head premium from your cattle, I know better. I'm going to pay you a little bit more the next year for those cattle. You're not going to receive the information. Now, if I lose $50 because of poor genetics in there, you bet I'm going to give it back to you. I'll say, here you go, look at this. 20% select, 20% choice. No problem. Boy, how did they just perform terrible. I mean, that's the only way you're going to get the information back. And if you are getting information back from the feed yards without a first guarantee with them, and it's bad, there's a reason they're doing it. But, you know, as far as general, if I do give out information, I do have that extra cost. It costs $5 to $7 for a tag transfer at the packing plant, $1 at first. I have several people that will pay for that to get the information back. Like I said, where a lot of our cattle go U.S. premium beef, everything we send U.S. premium beef, we did individual deal. I've got 2 order buyers. They get tag transfers on the cattle. Now, whether they're giving that back to the people they're buying from, because these are one-grain cattle, or they're doing what the feed yards are doing and they're buying cheaper the next time, or paying a little bit more to get it the next time because they know the value of the animal. That's what's really important.
I think maybe we heard something of very significant information here. It's what I call information dams for a reason. Those are, a dam and a waterway is to stop water from flowing for a reason. You just heard that he's not going to give you that information if it's his advantage not to. That drives integration, because the integrated system communicates from top to bottom, from front to back, and everybody's interest is to make it better. In an independent system, the feed yard, the packer, and the guy putting the genetics together, wanting to know how his cattle did, the information dam stops progression of improvement. In an integrated system, it's absolutely coordinated from top to bottom because the company objective is served by information flow. Our information, our industry, is handicapped by our independence, which is our greatest strength, and yet it is our Achilles heel. How are we going to change it?
Conversion's been good. One thing about it, we've seen Beefmaster cattle, you know, convert as low as in the 4s. It really depends on what we're trying to get accomplished. I think our conversions has gone up. Sorry about that, James. Here lately is cheap corn. We're going to make it bigger. It's like I talked about earlier. You know, we're going to take an animal that we probably got rid of at 1,350 to 1,500 pounds just because we can make the extra money by making them larger. You see that where steer carcasses are at 930 pounds. But performance conversions, you know, been outstanding. Been very impressed with them. Plus, it gives us an opportunity on our breeding side of it to do something where we can make them larger without running into yield-grade spore supplies because they have less back pad on them. You know, it works out very well for the feed yard side and for the customer.
Well, I'm not very articulate, and I'm not good in front of a crowd. But I sold feed to a lot of different farmers for years. And I was selling feed during a period of time when the hog business was basically small producers. And I watched the smaller producers who were independent and didn't want to accept information or changes or understand grids. And I had the privilege of working for a small period of time for one of these larger companies like PIC, where they were integrated with information. And I watched this transition through the years as a bystander. I wasn't a hog producer, but a lot of my good customers were hog producers. And the ones who were independent and didn't want to accept the grids and all the changes and didn't want to grow or didn't want to cooperate or to learn this information, they kind of kept doing their own thing, and they kept doing their own thing, and they kept doing their own thing, and resisting and resisting. I pulled into the stockyard one day, and this was just after, it was like in January, I can't even remember the year. But one of my favorite customers was pulling out the driveway, and he said, "Kathy," he said, "I just sold a load of hogs for 7 cents a pound." And it was devastating to me, because you know what? Another one of my customers, who wasn't a whole lot bigger, he was getting 35 cents a pound for his hogs, because he was grouped with other people and he was utilizing the information and he knew how to contract and use a grid. I saw that change, and I saw the hog industry disappear, the small guys, at least in our area, Kentucky, Tennessee, Southern Illinois. And I'm telling you, it's real. Information is important, it's powerful, and it keeps you relevant. And I don't know, I'm very emotional about this because I cared about my producers and basically got out of it. And I know that you're talking about thousands of animals and why you may not think that what you do affects somebody with 30 head or somebody with 25 head. The information they have is important, and you need to understand it, even though they're dealing with thousands of heads, because they are shaping the industry. They are the people who form what we have to learn to work into. And I don't know how to say it any more than that, but it's important for us to be teaching our kids how to understand this. It's important for them to understand the information and how to utilize it, because they may go to work for somebody who's using these numbers. I mean, they're living in a different world, and if you want to preserve what you have for your kids, you better be teaching them how to adjust and move forward. And that's it.
Folks, let me just take just a second here and ask you to give Kathy a round of applause for her support of Bill. You know, it takes a lot for what he does in his job in the last year or so. And you probably hadn't met Kathy a whole bunch, but I tell you what, she's the rock behind him, and I hope you acknowledge that. But Kathy, I'm going to tie your point into the purebred Beefmaster world. And I know where you're going, and I think I can tie it in for you. Next time you get ready to flush a donor cow, don't flush that cow because she's the one that's a $100,000 producer, or she's the one that has a legacy of doing this, this, and this. Instead, why don't you flush a cow that has some carcass value and some merit for your breed, because that cow's sons are going to go out and be bulls in Florida or in Mississippi or in New Mexico, and in turn, Leslie Callahan's going to buy those calves out of that bull. So think about it for yourself and your next generation of folks, is what Kathy's saying. Think about it as a bigger picture. Don't make your genetic selections and your breeding decisions based on your program, but think about the bigger picture.
Amen. Ego. What? Ego. a big advantage to you, because Kansas State did a study one time in a feed yard on a hot day. There's 35 degrees difference in surface high temperature, difference between red and black.
But Pete, hang on, I agree with you. Their problem is color pattern, it's not color. Let's define what we're talking, because we're talking about two different things. Spots and dots versus solid color.
Right.
You need to understand that.
Yeah, solid red color. Y'all still haven't mentioned the one that I think is the biggest problem. Yeah.
I think too many Beefmaster producers are trying to produce pretty little females, and not enough Beefmaster producers are trying to make bulls that'll go out and produce bulls for the commercial cowman.
We're a beef producer #1, remember that.
Exactly.
What else?
Inconsistent.
All right. You still haven't hit what I think is your biggest problem, and that's great.
Marlin.
Now, my question is, what the hell are y'all gonna do about it? It's up, I mean, it ain't up to me, whatever you produce, I'm gonna buy
You'll just buy it for cheaper.
it. I'll buy it cheap, hell, I like it.
I'd about sell it to him.
If you make spotted dotted, low IMF, piss poor cattle, people buy them.
Yeah, every damn thing's got a value. And you know, I asked this question one time at one of these kind of meetings, how many people think that the United States raises the best cattle in the world? Raise your hand. Well, y'all may be right, but if you ever been to the sale point in Paris, Texas, and seen some of that coon shit that runs through there. If we got the best cattle in the world, the rest of the world is in trouble. But everything you all mentioned here today is a problem with the breed. The biggest problem is you don't have enough guts to fix it.
Product will have a variable product. And I don't know what you meant by commodity, but if we don't understand maternal traits and terminal or maternal traits, we will continue to have a variable product that has to be sorted by somebody else, and we will bear the cost of the sort. Just like Pete said. So if we don't decide in the female, if we think in terms of selling bulls, we'll mostly spread bull. But if we think in terms of designing a product with a male and a female for a superior product, and we keep the maternal traits balanced with carcass, because 15% efficiency in a crossbred cow can't be ignored. $300 per cow is where it is today in a straight bred system versus a well-designed crossbred system. $300 a cow by the time you hit the rail. Now, how many of the industries in the United States can ignore that percentage? The folks that designed the Beefmaster breed tried to capture that. We have to do that today in mass, or our industry will shrink and others will take our market.
Going back to the genetic improvement of the cattle, we've probably seen the biggest genetic improvement in cattle in the last 5 years. And I guess my question to y'all is, what do you think that is? What was the biggest factor in the last, you could almost say 10 years, the drought. The drought has helped us cull the bottom 20% of the cattle in the United States from a production factor. If anybody thinks that we've done it on our own, they're sadly mistaken. It's because of structural and cultural erosion in the United States and the cattle industry since 1996, when we had our biggest beef herd of 130 million cattle. So I agree wholeheartedly with the genetic patterns that we're talking about, but we really have a unique opportunity as we're supposedly going to build our herd back. I'm not in agreement with that. I think short term we will. But we do have an opportunity here to really affect genetics, because over the next 2 to 3 years, if our markets stay sustainable, we're going to see people expand their herds, which means expansion of genetics, which means more bulls for y'all to sell. So we really need to take this window of opportunity in the next 2 to 3 years, in my opinion, to make a bigger impact than what the drought and many other factors have helped us do in the last 10 years.
I came over here to ask what the main problem that you saw with our cattle. You just answered that. You said, it was said earlier that from Dallas to Canada, you were using Boss Taurus cattle. They worked well. I'm right there in Dallas, or on that line. So, what do... What do we have to do with our Boss Indicus influenced cattle to get into that market up there? We don't need to worry about the Gulf Coast and down where we have to be there, but can we go north?
Right. All right. Why are you worried about that market? You don't need, I mean, you never will be, just like, you never will be able to run a Boss Indicus animal up north unless you do it, unless it's a steer that may be fed in a monocell barn. But remember, at the same time, I can take some of his heifers, and I can turn them out on some ranches of some friends of mine, and they'll die. They can't stand that country. But that Beefmaster cow can, so don't worry about it. It's a variation within breeds that you need to worry about. You could get, good example, I've got a really good friend with mine that rolls off of the 30 side. I think they make pizza cow like Blair. 3 generations of cattle. Now, they churn these cattle pretty quick because their idea is that heifer, if we're doing things right, that heifer ought to be better than the mother. So they get rid of the mother and keep the heifer. It took them 3 generations, which was probably 12, 15 years. They started out with a typical set of South Dakota cows. You know, cows that were great, 60, 65% choice at that time, 1 or 2% prime. And somewhere 30, 40, 50% CABs. The last kill that I saw was a set of their cows, or heifers. This is a set of 850 weight heifers going on feed. They gained 42 a day. They converted at 4. 98% CABs, 100% choice and better, and 25% prime. If they can do it, you can do it. But what you've got to identify and find, something I've said at one rescue meeting that really pissed these guys off. Last year, the top 5 bulls that are born in the nation, I'll bet you at least 4 of them are steers, if not all 5. Because they're just like that steer that you had. How would you love to have a bull that could produce high prime? He was produced on some commercial, he's a freak of nature, but he's produced on some commercial guy's outfit and he's had his nuts cut out.
What did you say earlier about being a freak of nature? State of nature. Okay. Double check.
I'd like to respond to your question about the north. The thing that we get confused about is, and especially in breed associations, we believe we're bull producers. Really, the cattle industry is forage improvers. We simply take the forage of our environment and turn it into the highest quality product we can that the consumer will pay a premium for. And so we have to look at our environment, the forage that environment provides us, find the cow that's most efficient in making a quality product, and then make that cow with whatever genetics will produce the highest satisfaction on the plate. And in between there's going to be profit. But if we try to take your cattle, which I did in the 90s, I hired a man from southern Colorado in the pig business, and he told me the Brangus breed is what I needed to put on my cows, so I bought a set of Brangus bulls, and I brought them to southeast Wyoming, and they lasted 2 years, and they didn't influence in a positive way my calf crop, because it was the wrong match for my forage and my environment. And so I won't take a North Dakota black quality to Houston and expect that animal to perform in an extremely profitable way. Neither will I bring a Beefmaster beautiful heifer to Canada or to 9,000 feet in Wyoming and expect her to compete well with a well-adapted quality cow. And so we can't do all the same things as in the chicken and the pork business, but we can designate product lines for the environment that are maternal and paternal, and that we can put together a product that's competitive financially and maximizes forage use.
Instead of asking how to go north, I would challenge you instead to define from Colorado west in north, the high desert country. Because there I get calls, Jim Davis, Superior Rep, one of the largest superior reps in the country in terms of volume of cattle moved. And Jim will call and say, I need to make females to survive in the desert. They'll graze a little longer, they'll travel the water a little further. And so don't worry about going to the Midwest. You're going to be frustrated. Match your cow to the environment that God made her to be in. You guys have a wonderful maternal product. So match her to the environment and match your marketing strategies to where she's going to survive, where she's going to
insight is very helpful. I understand the vertical integration that you mentioned because I also have a contract turkey farm in Cargill, and we started after college, and we've now run over 15 million birds through that facility, and how they do things compared to the beef industry. My question is going to be more focused on the two of you on the end, mainly Cheramie, because I know some of your experience, but I think understanding that our breeding decisions are more important on a yearly basis as compared to pork or chicken or turkey, because it takes us longer to see the result, and if we make a mistake, it sets us back farther because the turnaround is much slower. When we first got out of college, we started somewhat of an upgrading program, and we actually started getting recognized with an Angus base using EXT genetics, and we used some semen out of that bull. And the question I have is, for you, mainly Cheramie, because I know you should know this based on your background. If today I went out and I looked for the top Angus or red Angus or even a Charolais bull with all the genetic data you could possibly find collected and tried to buy the semen on that bull, what could I be expected to pay for that to incorporate it in my herd?
What do you pay for semen on that kind
Per
of bull?
straw on that kind of a bull.
30, 40 bucks.
Yeah.
And on a commercial basis, you can get it as low as 12 to 15. You're buying over 500 units, over 200 units.
That may be part of our problem on B&B producers, is that as you mentioned, the 18 to 20 per set of cattle, that person's not going to go buy $150 semen to put in those 18 cows, but he might buy $25
on commercial semen. The other thing to follow up on what he's asking too, when I'm mating cattle, particularly at Silver Spur, as we're designing that flow chart that Jim showed earlier, I'm not thinking about the daughters that I'm producing now. I'm already thinking about when I'm going to breed those daughters to the next generation. So don't make your breeding decisions based on today. Make your breeding decisions based on multiple generations. My mom's cows it's a pretty simple cow operation. I'm gone and she feeds them, but you know what? I can take for the next 3 years, but I want to breed every cow to. So think about it. If from a purebred producer, don't think about today, be thinking about tomorrow.
And I'd like to respond to that number, that 18-head number. What we're doing is to accommodate those folks with less than 1,000 cows. Because people that have 1,000 cows and more can put together a well-designed program, and they will match their environment. But to impact the industry, people with less than 100 cows do not have the thought processes or the resources to put together within their system the entire flow of genetics that can be done with 1,000 cows and more, because they can't segregate their herds. I tried to do it with 500 cows, raise them out in replacements. It was not financially productive, because I had to keep a herd of Angus cows and breed them Hereford in order to get the Baldy, in order to put the Charolais bull. Now I'm buying how many sets of genetics? If I buy a replacement heifer that's consistent year after year after year, and this is, I think, the biggest opportunity in our industry, is to buy a well-known, consistent female that I can match with a sire that will do what I need to do for my customer.
Yes, sir, Steve.
As a group of small breeders that most of us do not retain ownership, so the carcass end product is usually something that we know nothing about as far as feedback to us. The main tool that we have to use is ultrasound. I would be interested to know, many of our targets are kind of that 3 and above IMF for our breed of cattle. Certainly we have cattle that will have IMF scores of 4 and sometimes 5, but that's about the max. My question is, as we are ultrasounding calves in small numbers, what should we be targeting? I mean, I understand biggest is better on the IMF if we can get there, but with our breed of cattle, what would be the cutoff? How much IMF should we be demanding of our cattle as we select those that we are keeping, and how big a ribeye area? Especially on heifers and bulls. I have a bull that scanned a 17-inch ribeye with a 3-point-something IMF. I have a heifer that had a 14-inch ribeye with above a 3 IMF. But that's the best that I have ever had. A lot of our cattle are for heifers, yearlings are in the 8-inch ribeye area. Yeah, my question is, what should we be cutting off? What's the ribeye area that if it's not at that area, if it's not at that amount, consider culling that animal. If the IMF is not a certain amount, we ought to be considering culling that animal. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that, because that is one of the only tools as small breeders that we have to identify those cattle.
Les Wayne Pete, before you jump in, hold on. I would encourage you, instead of looking at actual measures, to utilize your EPDs within the breed. I would also encourage you to utilize the genomic, or understand that there's a genomic incorporation in your EPD piece, because of that will allow you to have increased accuracy at a much faster rate. It's always fun to have the biggest of such and such. Remember, in some environments, biggest isn't always better. Optimum is sometimes the answer, so you need to ask yourself that. There's places where you and I have run cattle, Jim. Optimum is a whole lot more important than the most on some traits. And then, as Bill mentioned, you have some selection tools coming out for you soon in terms of some dollar indexes. Those numbers are extremely important and valuable when used correctly. Don't make the same mistake that the Angus boys are making and have made and chasing dollar B, okay? Because then you're going to create a terminal cow herd. So to answer your question is about, is a 3 better than a 4 or an 8 better than a 7 on ribeye? Well, depends on what the rest of the group is. Are they all 13s, or all 14s, or are they all 3s? You need to look at the whole picture. I don't know that it's a cutoff number, and it's going to depend on where you are and what your end market is relative to where you're trying to accomplish.
My answer to your question is, are you making a cow or a bull? Very different answer.
What We do. You know, I know in the register side, you've got to use, or AI. We don't use any. You know, the way I look at it, whoever the head of that is at Texas A&M Vet School was probably a real brilliant son of a gun. But every bull I own is smarter than he is about breaking the cow. Something we do that I don't know anybody else that does, we try to have a heifer at 20 months. We're naturally selecting for puberty. I've never seen any research done, but I firmly believe that early puberty and grade go hand in hand. So if we're getting these heifers bred to calve at 20 months, I think we're really increasing, number one, early puberty, I think has a lot to do with fertility. Number one thing that you've got covered, and I think it has a lot to do with grade. So saying that, I think I can back that up because we have one cattle in the 8 county CC program, and so some straight Angus calves. They were fed way too long. And they didn't have an implant, so we realized that the cattle were great better. But those cattle, by saying they're fed way too long, they're 35% force and fives, but they're also 35% prime and 98% choice. So I think my theory is kind of backed up with that. And that's something that I think y'all could do to help. My thing is kind of like she said, is that you don't, what you want to look for is the outliers. If all your calves, if you're looking to keep it out back of herd building, and all your calves are scanning the diagonal information of the 3, and you've got one calf over here at 6, if he's structurally sound, I think the greatest thing facing coming up in this industry is these growth stage systems, where we can measure conversion. Fertility is number 1. I think the conversion is going to be number 2. But if we can match all these traits together, where we can have that animal that is fertile, that converts well and grades, we're producing those cattle today, so you've got to identify those cattle and be able to use it. You know, the dairy deals is, you know, they got one thing they look at. Also, Cisco Food actually gives a premium for dairy beef, Holstein beef, because it's consistent. It may not be the best, but it's not the worst. And you know, you can buy a Holstein steer in California, one in Florida, one in Wisconsin, one in Texas, and it'll be more genetically alike than a silver spur cow. So, you know, we've got to see consistency. We've got to have ear in these cattle in a lot of this country. It is a requirement to do that. But you can make this breed a whole lot better. And let me go, I'll say one other thing. I think a lot of my success has been raised with this young man to really understand where the business was and where it's come from. You know, he never did read a book by Colonel Goodnight. Ellie stayed at his house and knew him. Bert Brink started in the 60s with his cousin. So every afternoon after he gets through reading the paper, he said, I don't know, kind of porch and talk. Think about why the Beefmaster breed was built and started and what was going on there. The steers were sent to California, fed out there. There used to be 27 packing houses on Vernon Street in LA alone. Guess what though? They paid off the breakers. They knew what, they could make this cattle break anything they wanted to. The heifer calves that were not kept back for replacements were killed in San Antonio, weighing 450 to 500 pounds. And they were not being fed. And if they were being fed, they were kind of thin and might be fed up to 700 and killed them. So the system that, And grading on the heifers was not important. I tell that's grade standard anyway, it's so what. But they were going into a grade there that, you know, a little, T-bone looked like a pork chop. But, you know, a lot of families could buy a T-bone steak. They may fill up on beans and tortillas, but at least everybody got a steak on a special occasion and could afford that small cut.
Yes, sir.
Bill, my question is more a marketing question. First of all, let me thank all of y'all for being here. It's a tremendous privilege for us to have all of y'all here. Mr. Callahan, you hit on it, though, the average cow herd, and I live in Central Texas, not far from you. You know, they're all very small, 8, 10, 12, 14 head of cattle. But and part of the problem in turning the beef industry is that fact. You know, most of the cattle in Winston County, if you really look at it, or because somebody's going to bring coffee in the morning and talk about the black bull involved, you know, and has nothing to do with economics. But we are concerned about the economics. My question, really, I go to preaching because, you know, it really doesn't make a difference if there's a drought or not. They're going to feed the cattle. You know, it's hard to turn that industry, and it's not the same as the hog industry because I was there too. It's just not the same. Everybody wants to put on a big hat and be a cowboy and go to town, so it's a lot. What do we do, though, as a breed to change your opinion about Beefmaster cattle? Now, some of you got some good opinions, but Mr. Callahan, when you go to buy, you look at black cattle. I know, I watch. Pete, you're looking for one that's going to make you money. But we need to be able to do something. I know we're doing research. We've got to do something. How do we get that information back when you start preaching that those Beefmaster cattle are going to do what you want to do?
For one, personally, we don't get as hung up on the color as most of the beef yards do. And the primary reason is that if it's the right set of cattle, the advantage that somebody like myself, and this is a prejudiced opinion, of dealing direct when you're in the commercial industry with somebody like myself is we can still talk the old way. When I talk to Pete, we sell Pete a lot of cattle. I can talk to Pete about frame, and I can talk to Pete about structure, and I can talk to him about condition, and he understands those things. So it's the ability to sell the cattle for the merits of what they are. If you're good at what you do in this industry, whether you're marking a beef yard or one of these boys at the end looking for good sires or good commercial steers, a good cattleman knows good cattle. The blacks right now are some of the most counterfeited counterfeited cattle that we have in our industry because everybody loves them. Mark said it earlier, as long as they go through the packing industry, they can put an A on them. A does, you know, to go into their certified Angus product. It's been bastardized. Yes, as an industry, everybody's trained, especially as new people come into the industry, that black is beautiful. It's perception, number one. Those spots and dots, that's a problem. Although some of the best steers when I was doing the McDonald's program were sweating vertically integrated. We were doing 250,000 cattle a year. We were background and buying them out of sale barns. We were tracking them with the EID tags when they cost $18 a piece. And, you know, we had guys throwing them away and not reusing them. The best performing steer, believe it or not, that ever walked through that program yielded 68% graded prime, and we had him identified as a Santa Gertrudis. So within every breed, you know, it's a perception. There is some reality in it that the Beefmasters, there's light bone Beefmasters, you know, there's the perception out there in a lot of parts of the world that you know, the big swingers, they, you know, get cactus in their penis and those kind of things. So you need to clean the breed up. You need to work on the grade scenario. You need to get away from the spots and the dots. It's not going to happen overnight, the perception of the industry. But where change begins is with panels like this that will talk talk to you openly about the negatives and the positives of the industry, but it is a perception. But spots and dots and grades, and if you start there, I think in 10 years, when Pete's retired and I'm still here and they're middle aged, maybe we can change it. But it starts. I personally have that same perception about Hereford. Jim would look at me and tell me I'm crazy. But come down here and look at the Herefords in Central Texas and he would understand why we don't like Hereford. Because they're going to roll over and die. Or if he sent me those South Dakota cattle down here, you know, I could find them all because they'd be standing in a tank at 95 degrees. Or standing under the shade. They're easy to gather, the black ones are. So, you know, you have positive characteristics, keep those upbeat. You know, the Florida guys, the Texas guys, the Louisiana guys, I mean, the northern guys don't like to hear this, but the numbers of cattle in the world are here. They're not up there. The biggest cattle producing states have to have the year on them. So take your positives, increase that, your negatives, your spots and dots and grades, and work on that. That will be a very simple factor for somebody that's in the commercial industry and not in the breeders association.
Quit worrying about what people are doing. There's no reason that the Beefmaster breed couldn't grade as well as ours. The only reason it doesn't is you. Don't say that, oh, they or what, or something that way. You know, look in the mirror, the problem's gone. It can be fixed if you want it to. You've got to admit that there's a problem, and you've got to be willing to fix it. And don't worry about these 18-10 guys. You know, Jim Stevenson. He was shocked when I asked him, you know, he was trying to make a move down here to Texas. And I asked him, who is your biggest competitor? And of course, he at that time named Camp Cooley and Rob Brown and Bradley. And I said, Cam, you're nuts. Your biggest competitor is your local state of barn. And he was shocked that that's the way it worked down here. You know, I can't get these 18 to 50 head guys to cut the damn bulls, let alone give a shot. Or AI cow. Don't worry about that. Hell, you know, their heifers are the ones they can't get. They go back into replacement. And that may be the hurt. So, you know, forget those guys. You're not going to change them. You know, the death loss that we sell on cattle is horrific. The amount of drugs we have to use is astronomical. And we could give a lot more for these calves if somebody would cut a bull and give, you know, if they give a fat leg, it'd be great. But give some kind of fuel power. But we can't get that done, and we're not going to get it done. So don't worry about what's happening outside. Look at what's happening here in this room.
Two things. Sharpen your pocket knives, use them, cut the bull calves. That's a big part of it. And two, I mentioned this earlier today to someone, is that I go to a lot of breed association meetings, get to experience a lot of activity in breed associations. You guys have a lot of positive momentum. Actually, you have a great positive momentum. You know, I hadn't seen a whole lot of cliques off over here and off over here and arguing and bad-mouthing each other. And that happens in the rest of these. There's a convention that's going to happen in about 2 or 3 days in Kansas City. If you want to learn about 4th grade, 8th grade high school girls cackling, go watch the Angus Boys. And I'm an Angus breeder. But your opportunity is to work together. And Mr. Gaddis, my suggestion is, you know, we've all mentioned carcass data, we've mentioned feedlot data. You guys need to get together and make the investment to own cattle all the way through, whether it be some of you partner up together, get that data, and then come back to the guys buying cattle and say, here's the proof. If you're not willing to invest in your cattle and in your breed, then these guys aren't going to be. So you guys need to step up.
Yes, sir, Mark.
Feel like we've kind of gone terminal here. Cheramie, Brandon, what are some maternal traits and aspects that you really like about the breed and some that we can fix to keep raising these calves to feed the world and feed the industry in the future?
Real quick, I'll buy it.
Go ahead, Brandon.
A long comment on your belly.
I was trying to make some big strides really quick, and we were utilizing AI at a large scale for our operation. I read myself into a corner, and I had to kind of read myself out of it as far as we had we chased carcass so hard at one point that we lost the maternal in our cattle. Had to step back and try to figure out what my baseline was, and regardless of whether it was, and I guess I'm trying to lump some questions and thoughts together all in one, but we just measured everything we could. And as far as knowing whether we needed a 3 or 4 or 5.5 IMF or ribeye area, whatever it might be, once we got a baseline established, then we just started moving forward above the baseline at that point. Found what worked in our environment, and then we worked to correct and raise our baseline. The Beefmaster breed, it intrigued me a lot to want to incorporate that back into our cattle, where we're still improving our Brangus and wanting to add some adaptability into them. Even though we have Brangus cattle now on the Gulf Coast, we can still breed some adaptability out of them. So we've utilized some Beefmaster genetics in there. We've improved some bone and milking ability to a degree. I think that the Brangus cattle have done a really good job. We have to be real careful on our milk in our area. We can sure produce too much milk for our environment. But the Beefmaster has just been such a good stable breed for so many ranches and ranching families in our area. Being in the part of the industry that we're in, and we're in the black industry, our customers are looking for black cattle. So we bring some Beefmasters into our genetics and offering some half-blood females. I had to be careful with the color. They make fantastic females. Haven't been able to feed any of the crossbred steers, or well, they've been fed, but we weren't able to get the data collected individually on those steers. But I stepped back a year and did not incorporate any Beefmasters into our herd, just to see what the customer take was going to be. I'm looking to incorporate it back into the herd, and I don't know exactly what to say about looking for that. I'm going to be looking for one sire, is what I'll be looking for. Well, I won't own any Beefmaster bulls, at least at this point. We'll just utilize the AI. So I'm always looking for that one sire, and I think that I want to research it more and more and find out which ones. I think no matter what you're doing with your herd, whether large or small, just find some way to measure something in your herd, even if it's just your tag numbers. And it's amazing how much you'll start learning about your herd, all the way to ultrasound measures, to anything you can possibly do to get some feed yard data back on them and make improvements from there.
There's $1,000 walking. And the reason is, and I know this about the bull, the Brangus bull that he did it with, and the Angus bull that I did it with, and here's why. We picked the cattle over time for our replacement females, the calves that were born in the first 30 to 45 days of calving season, because those are generally going to be out of my most fertile cows. Not because they were the biggest, and make sure you understand that. Not because they were the biggest, because they were the...
I just wanted to, just let y'all know, if I haven't already, just talking to you individually and stuff, but, what we're buying your bulls for is our daughters, females. That's what we're looking for. Florida is it's a subtropical climate. It's similar to here, but we get lots and lots of rain, lots of bugs, lots of parasites, lots of things that bite you, and it's pretty rough. We got lots and lots of grass, and if somebody didn't know, you can come down there and just see worlds of green grass, lush, but it's pretty sorry. Most all of our grass is pretty sorry. As opposed to like the higher desert stuff, country where, a few little great blades of grass here, that'll fill up for the day. Where this is so strong. Our grass, they got to eat a 55-gallon drum of it just to serve their maintenance requirements for that day, much less, they're gestating or lactating or whatever. So I say that because, when we're selecting these bulls, we buy quite a few of them. We're looking for, my heritage is a little bit vulgar, but like nuts and guts, that's the time. Just a big, we want a deep rib on these bulls, a deep body, because these are the females that we're looking for out of them. And that's the biggest thing that we, this phenotype, that hopefully his daughters will resemble him. Just like I kind of look like my dad a little bit. So we look for a deep rib, a long body. We need them to be able to eat lots of starry grass. They've got to have a big tank on them, basically. That's huge with us. These little lace-gutted, tight-ribbed heifers are not going to do well for us. And so therefore bulls, we're going to shy away from those bulls like that. We need bulls we just need them with a lot of capacity. We want bulls with rugged, heavy bone. I heard somebody say earlier you can't eat the bone, that's right. But all his daughters that we're going to be keeping, and that's why we're buying these bulls, we need them to be rugged. We need them to be able to hold up under a bull. We do everything natural service. We need them to be able to hold up. We just got done preg testing our cow last month, and we've still got some 98 and 99 model cows that back then we didn't demand them to breed as Germans, but we would expose them. Now we kind of demand them to, but we still got some females that got bred as a German in 98 or 99 and still coming through, still bred. So the longevity is another characteristic and reason why we love Beefmaster. That goes into money. That's, comes back to dollars to us. As far as, so another thing I was thinking, Brandon, I've been thinking and listening to all the comments and questions and trying to find a lot of things here, but moderation. I hear everybody talking about carcass and IMF, everybody, and while we do look at those things when we go to bull sales and look at natural bulls, I'm not looking at that as much as I am just the maternal traits. Scroll circumference is huge with us, and then growth. So we're looking to produce a female, a replacement female for us, and the steers are basically a byproduct. But we need to work, and they are. And the data that we're getting back from feed yards now, they're working. So we're good there. Now we're just phenotype and his daughters is really what they're after. So my suggestion is just moderation. Don't chase carcass. Brandon said you kind of got behind a while back. You kind of went extreme, and you start single trait selection, for carcass, and we did that. We painted ourselves into a corner, and we realized it. So we're getting out of that now, but we saw our cow herd, our females, get to be those undesirable traits that we really don't want. We had all kinds of carcass, but it doesn't do you a bit of good when the female can't hold up 8 or 9 years and she's done. Or, the little knots that she's, raised and really have the calves, so we're creating that problem. So, we gotta have calves on the ground, she's gotta be able to survive and breed down there every year. And so those are some big traits. The color deal, I think that that Beefmaster breed is a great time right now because the supply and demand, inventory is low right now, and the yards and they'll take anything they get, yellow, purple, gray, whatever. They need get their pens full. And this is the time that we're trying to get after it, and we did primarily have all Brangus cattle, and we still do. We still have a majority of our cow herd is black, is Brangus, but what we feel like is this is our chance to stretch out there, reach out there, and gain some ground. Where at one point you had to be black. Everybody probably agrees with that. And at one point, that was, if it wasn't black, they wouldn't even look at you, or discount you left and right. So now that's kind of eased up, so I think that's an advantage for all of us. And then like Cheryl said, I'm not gonna buy any bulls if they've got white feet and too much white on them. I don't mind this white on their head a little bit, maybe a little on the belly. But what we found is those bulls with white feet or a white fight on their side or just unfighted, they're going to mark their heifers. And then that heifer is going to mark her calves, first year calves. We've seen it. So we've learned, we're going to stay away from that. And then as far as, reds, duns, I love them. And the blacks, I know everybody's got different tastes and different desires, but we're not interested in the blacks. And I'm sure other people have got some scenarios where they work great for them, but that's not what we're looking for. If we're buying a Beefmaster bull, we want a red bull, or that's what we want. A black bull, buy some things. And then I heard somebody mention something about milk. That's one of the great things about the breed as a characteristic and trait is that they milk well. But we do have to keep in mind that we can't have them because our environment is pretty harsh. If we get these heavy milkers, they'll come and milk on us. And they don't hold up as good. So just moderation and females. That's what we're after. The steers for us are a byproduct of that.
Great. One of the things that I want you to take away from, in our industry we have specialists. Different segments do different things. And up here, we have spanned the spectrum. We heard Leslie has been responsible for the bottom line on the packing plant. I work for a packer too. That'll open your eyes. This man right here, Mark Sebranek, has fed a phenomenal amount of cattle. He knows more about the genetics, from his end than almost anybody I've ever run across. This guy can speak 5 or 6 different breeds and pedigrees. Mr. Bonds is the exact same way. I tell you what, one of the most fun and exciting days I ever had was when I went through your educational for me, and I was really impressed with the product of his handiwork. And by the way, we sold it separately pretty well for you. We were really pleased with that. But the point I'm making is this is balance. Everything begins with a cow that is adapted to her particular production environment. Now, we as a breed have got some new tools coming out that's going to help us achieve that balance. In listening to Travis and Brandon and Mr. Lerwick, what they're looking for on the female side is very, very important. We've got our new maternal index that will be coming out with the next run. And gentlemen, you guys that are in, they're looking for bulls, especially Brandon and Travis, I think you're going to find this very interesting. These new indices that we have coming out, they compile all of the different traits that you're looking for to avoid single trait selection. You know, this thing, we need to stay out of the ditches and keep right down the middle of the road. So this maternal index we've got coming out with, I'm very excited about it because it's going to feature productivity, longevity, stability, things of that nature, plus performance and adaptability into the particular environment. Mark, been a little time filming, but we got a terminal index coming down the line too. The concept, you know, is going to be fairly similar to what, you know, the Angus breeders did, except we're going to emphasize the carcass traits such as dressing percentage, hot carcass weight, yield rate, you know, we looked at it. So we as an association are building the tools that you professionals, you know, can use as we move forward. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. I thank each and every one of you up here in front of us from the bottom of my heart. The perspective that you have brought forth to our breeders has been good. I think our breeders have been challenged. I would strongly encourage you, because there's probably a lot of questions that you did not want to ask in the open. These gentlemen, the lady are here. I would encourage you to come visit with them one-on-one. Take advantage of it. This is a golden opportunity. The awards banquet will begin at 11:30, and after that, we've got a great set of cattle for sale, part of the President's Council. So let's give our participants a big round.